Emma, my sister-in-law, glared at me in front of the funeral reception and said, "Just having a family like parasites here lowers the dignity of this place." Parasites. My body was trembling with anger. I am Ava, 27 years old. I just got married to my husband James last year. He was a high school classmate, and back then, just another peer. We exchanged contacts at a reunion as working adults, which led to dating and eventually marriage. But our marriage was never peaceful. James' family has been a line of doctors for generations, with his dad and his sister, 4 years his senior, both being doctors. "I am treated like a failure at home," James often told me when we started dating. He always looked gloomy when talking about his family. "Mom always insisted I must become a doctor because Dad was one. But I've been obsessed with soccer since I was a kid and never followed Mom's orders. She's always hated me, back then and now." James refused to take the entrance exams for prestigious middle schools as Mom suggested, instead going to public middle and high schools, spending his days immersed in soccer with friends. On the other hand, Emma followed Mom's path, went to medical school, and became a doctor. James' mom always compared Emma and James, constantly belittling him. James, not interested in medicine, pursued economics in college and now co-owns an IT company with friends. It started as a small company with a few employees, but James seemed fulfilled working with his friends. "You're not a failure. You didn't just follow what your parents said. You continued doing what you loved, and now you even run your own company. I really respect you." "It makes me happy to hear that, Ava. Thank you," James said with joy, and I felt happy too. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and after James' proposal, we got married. My family wholeheartedly celebrated our marriage, but James' family didn't. When I first visited James' home, his sisters Emily and Emma looked at me with cold eyes.
"Still, James is the only son of this family. As a family of doctors, we'd be troubled if you didn't marry someone from a family equal to ours. Because he went to a public high school instead of taking middle school entrance exams. He only met someone from an ordinary family." "James has always embarrassed me." "Talking to James is pointless. He's always done what he wanted. I have no intention of attending his wedding." I overheard Emily and Emma's conversation from the next room. They were speaking loudly, perhaps intentionally letting me hear. Eventually, at James' suggestion, we had a private wedding ceremony abroad. Even if not all relatives agreed, as long as we wanted to marry, that was fine for James. After our wedding at a foreign church, as thanks for raising us, we sent souvenirs to each of our families. Then I got a call from my mom. "Ava, thank you for the lovely souvenir. There may be tough times ahead, but Mom will always support you. You are our pride, Ava. Dad will be proud to see you've grown into a wonderful adult," Mom said, her voice mixed with tears. My dad, who had a chronic illness, passed away during my high school years without recovering from a hospital stay. He had been overworked and his body reached its limit. Mom single-handedly raised my younger sister and me, juggling multiple part-time jobs without rest, allowing me to go to the vocational school I wanted. I also worked part-time to help. Mom always praised me, saying, "Ava, you're my pride." She complimented me. Emily called too, when James was out, so I answered. As soon as she realized it was me, she spoke in an irritated tone. "The gift arrived at our house today."
"I'm glad you called. Thank you so much for reaching out." When I said this, Emily paused for a moment, sighed, and then said,
"Well, where am I supposed to put such trash?"
"Huh?" What I had sent to Emily's house was a ceramic figurine I found abroad. James and I had thought hard about it and chose a dog figurine, knowing Emily liked dogs. It was quite expensive, but we decided to splurge on it. However, to Emily, it seemed nothing more than trash. Emily continued as if to twist the knife.
Well, now that you're married, it's too late for anything, but I just want to say one thing.
Yes?
Just so you know, we don't consider ourselves relatives with your family at all.
I was taken aback by her outburst. Speechless, all I could manage was a faint. Yes. That was the only reply I could give.
Your family, single parent, right? Do you own your house?
No, it's rented.
Rented? Oh, I see.
Emily said this with a tone of disdain and then added with a voice full of contempt.
We have no intention of helping out a family like yours. You know.
What?
Just because you're married, if you think you can come begging us for money, I'll make sure to say no.
I was shocked. It was as if she was accusing my family of begging Emily for money. We never asked for anything. I couldn't stay silent and retorted strongly. Excuse me, what are you talking about? We have never and will never ask your family for money. It's out of the question.
Really? Are you sure?
Why would you think that?
To be honest, you graduated from a vocational school and work as a clerk, right?
Yes, Emily asked in a sarcastic tone.
A girl from a rented house marrying into a family like ours. You must be thrilled, right?
Excuse me?
I'm sure you think that. There's a clear difference between your family and ours. It's not a match, right? But you managed to lead James and even get married.
Anger at being insulted made my voice tremble as I responded.
Lead him on?
James and I married of our own free will. It wasn't like I forced us into marriage. Emily sighed heavily and continued.
You're quite bold, not knowing your place. Emma says she's convinced you pressured James into marriage. She's usually right about these things. Mom will definitely be asked for money from Ava's family, so we need to make it clear from the start, she said.
Emma said that? I was even more surprised. I couldn't believe Emma would say something so awful.
Yes, Emma's a doctor, married to another doctor, and they run a hospital together. His family is also full of doctors. Emma's wedding was held in the largest hall at a hotel, a grand affair with many doctors, lawyers, and politicians attending. Last year, we gathered at our family's vacation home. This year, we're planning to go to theirs, but you don't have to come.
Emily spoke condescendingly, and I was so angry I couldn't find the words.
Just remember, we will not provide any financial support to you and your family.
With that, Emily hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, stunned. I had never been treated with such disdain and disrespect in my life. Indeed, my family is not wealthy. But just because of that, Mom would never beg people for money. My sister, who still lives at home, has already got a job at a local company and is working hard as a working adult. There's no way we could ever ask for money from James' family. Yet Emily and Emma have let their paranoia run wild, worrying about offering us money and declaring they wouldn't. I wish I hadn't bothered sending Emily a souvenir. That's how I felt. That night, when James came home, I told him about my conversation with Emily. James was furious and immediately wanted to call Emily, but I stopped him. It's okay, James. Even as I tried to calm him, James was red with anger. No, it's not okay. It's awful for her to say such disrespectful things to you. We need to set things straight. It's fine. I made it clear that we would never ask for money, and I don't want to get into a heated argument. Seeing how upset I was, James calmed down. Ava, I'm sorry. I hate that you had to go through this. Well, as long as you understand, it's okay. James put down his mobile phone he was holding. By the way, did your mom like the souvenir? Yes, she was very happy. Said she'd treasure it forever. That's good. Unlike my mom, who calls things trash. Honestly, I envy your family. James said this with a wry smile. I wish I hadn't been born into a family like that. Anyone who's not a doctor is worthless, and nothing is ever good enough. A child's carefully chosen gift is treated like garbage. I wish I'd been born into a family that could accept me as I am and truly celebrate their child's marriage like your family. Watching James say this, I felt sorry for him, knowing he must have been suffering. Sometime later, we got a sudden call from James' family. James' father, Richard, had collapsed while out and had been rushed to the hospital. Despite a few days in the hospital, his condition didn't improve, and he eventually passed away. Richard was only 55 and still working as a hospital director. It was hard to believe he was gone. James was shocked by his father's sudden passing. Emily and Emma seemed unable to accept the situation, very distraught. But there was no time for tears. Funeral arrangements had to be made. Seeing everyone so exhausted, I decided to do whatever I could to help James and his family. Later, Emily led the funeral. I was amazed at the grandeur of the funeral. The size of the venue, the amount of flowers, the number of people, it was all unlike anything I had ever seen. The large crowd caused chaos at the funeral's reception. My mom and I, seeing this, decided to help out at the reception desk. That's when Emma appeared. "Ava, what are you doing here?"
I thought I could help out with the chaos at the reception.
At this, Emma's expression turned stern. "Can you not do as you please?" "Excuse me? Stop acting like you're one of us." Emma seemed really angry. I was taken aback, not thinking I had done anything to warrant such anger.
I just thought I could be of some help.
Pointing at my clothes, Emma said, "Wearing such a cheap morning dress and walking around the reception is embarrassing for us." As Emma spoke these words filled with anger, my mom, who had been helping out, came over to see what was happening. "You know, both my mom and I still don't acknowledge your marriage to James. And yet, here you are at my dad's funeral, acting like a part of the family. Please don't do that."
"I'm sorry."
Emma said this to me with a condescending look. My mom was very surprised by this. "Just because you help out at Dad's funeral doesn't mean we owe you anything. We want to entertain any demands he might make later."
"I wasn't planning to ask for anything."
"You never know what you might say later, just making it clear." I was furious, but I didn't want to argue at Richard's funeral, so I just looked down and remained silent. "As you can see, everyone here at Dad's funeral is either a doctor or an influential figure in town. All the relatives are of that caliber. You're the only odd one out, Ava. Do you realize that?" I didn't answer. "Maybe if you wore a pearl necklace, you could have looked a bit more presentable. It's surprising that you're even here in such a cheap morning dress. How shabby." My mom came and stood by me, looking at Emma with a strong gaze. Emma scrutinized my mom from head to toe. "Just having a family like parasites here lowers the dignity of this event." "Parasites?" Emma sneered at me. "Yes, parasites. Who's contributing more to the living expenses? You or James?" "James." Emma laughed mockingly. "I thought so. With the income difference between James and Ava, you're practically a parasite." I'm not a parasite." I wanted to retort, but I was too angry to find the right words. Then suddenly my mom burst out laughing. Emma looked at my mom surprised. "What?" Mom replied firmly with a smile. "I am Ava's mom. Sorry about that. We never thought we were lowering the standard of the funeral by helping out at the busy reception." Emma cut her off. "You don't need to do anything more." "Yes, of course." Mom then hardened her expression, leaning close to Emma, and said in a strong tone, "Very well, we'll leave now. Come on, Ava." Saying this, Mom took my hand and started walking. Surprised, I followed her. Emma stood there, shocked and speechless. As we left the venue and passed the exit, there were 3 flashy women outside. 2 were American and 1 was French, holding a young child. Then my mom said to them, "Do whatever you want. I don't care anymore." The women hurriedly rushed back into the venue. "Mom, whose were those women?" "After being insulted like that, I'm not going to bother anymore. Let them deal with it. Mom said this angrily and strode off. Curiosity got the better of me, and I returned to the funeral venue. Inside, it was an uproar. A woman in her 30s, whom I had seen outside, was pleading with Emily.
I had an agreement with Richard for a monthly payment of $3,000, but I haven't received the last 3 months' payments. Please, pay the $9,000 immediately.
Then a woman on her early 20s next to her spoke up. Richard used to give me $1,000 a month as pocket money, said another woman. And he promised to support my college fees until I graduate. Then the French woman, holding a small child, added, Richard is the child's dad. We need the money or we'll be in trouble. The women's desperate appeals left Emily and Emma pale-faced. Their loud claims were so disruptive that Emily and Emma tried to take them outside, but they were met with fierce resistance and wouldn't budge. The other attendees, overhearing, began to murmur, Richard's mistress? No way. Everyone started to make noise. Emily and Emma looked even more panicked as the whisper spread. Richard, the respectable head of a large hospital, had secretly supported 3 mistresses, providing them with apartments and money. Upon learning of Richard's death, these women had rushed to claim their money. One even produced a contract of mistresshood, complete with Richard's signature. Emily was speechless, realizing Richard had been unfaithful and financially supporting other women. Emma, usually so assertive, was now sweating and at a loss for words. The women were showing each other photos with Richard, boasting about who has his favorite. The appearance of Richard's 3 mistresses turned the dignified funeral into a noisy scene, and the attendees quickly left, appalled. The person who tried to stop them? My mom. While helping at the reception, she noticed the casually dressed women trying to enter the funeral and took them outside to talk. Realizing the seriousness, Mom tried to persuade them. It's not the right time for such discussions. Please calm down and wait until the funeral is over. Mom said this and seemed to have stopped the girls outside the entrance to prevent them from entering. Thanks to her efforts, the ceremony continued smoothly. However, after being insulted by Emma, Mom got so angry that she stopped trying to control Richard's mistresses, leaving the scene. This left the women, not even in mourning attire, to confront Emily, demanding money. I can't believe my husband, who seems so dedicated and professional, had 3 mistresses, and some even younger than his daughter. What was my marriage all about? Dad, he was the PTA president at my elementary and middle schools, my ideal father. Emily and Emma couldn't accept the truth about Richard being revealed by his mistresses. I always had a suspicion, James said. What? What do you mean? Both Emily and Emma exclaimed. James calmly explained. Dad was often out late or overnight on his days off. I suspected he might be cheating. Emily, in disbelief, countered.
But he wasn't often staying overnight for doctors' gatherings.
James replied with a slight smile. Overnight gatherings aren't that common. Emily, looking distressed, continued. Why didn't you tell me, James, if you knew? You never listened to anything I said, right? You didn't care about a son who wasn't a doctor. Then the youngest mistress spoke up.
Richard often said he didn't want to stay at home. Why did I marry her? I don't even know myself when I see her face.
Emily looked deeply shocked. No way. The mistress continued, looking pleased with herself.
He said his wife and daughter being the strongest at home, always nagging. It was suffocating for him and his son. Staying there would shorten our lifespans, he'd say.
I can't believe my husband thought that way. Emily, overwhelmed by shock, sat down and wept. Dad didn't force me to become a doctor as much as Mom did. He must have felt out of place at home too. Our family, with a head of a large hospital, It's just impressive on the outside but rotten inside. James muttered this in a disheartened tone. Emma, almost in tears, continued.
I always answered Dad when he asked who I admire the most. Why, Dad? Why?
Cutting through the heavy atmosphere, the French mistress calmly demanded,
Quickly, the money!
The other woman who started pleading desperately.
I have rent bills to pay. I need the money right now. Without Richard's support, I can't graduate from college. You have to pay.
Emma and Emily, who had called me a parasite, were now relentlessly pursued by these real parasites, demanding money. None of the women showed any sign of mourning Richard. They were solely focused on getting the money he would have given them if he were alive. How could you, Richard? Support 3 mistresses behind my back? You, of all people? Emily cried out to Richard's smiling portrait.
My goal was to become a doctor like Dad. And now, this? It's too cruel, Dad.
Emma also wept as she spoke to the portrait. The funeral ended in chaos, but the battle was just beginning. The mistresses kept showing up at Emily's house, demanding money. Their confrontations at the doorstep became the talk of the neighborhood, spreading rumors of Richard's 3 mistresses. Emma, who had always acted superior as a doctor's wife, quickly became the laughingstock of the neighborhood. Unsavvy and overwhelmed, Emily ended up giving in to the women's demands. Unable to bear the incessant visits and phone calls, she paid them off. This infuriated Emma.
Mom, what a foolish thing to do. They'll keep demanding money forever now.
But I couldn't take it anymore.
Emily raised her voice in defense. It was the first time I'd seen them argue.
Mom, you're so naive for your age. Paying people like that means they'll never stop asking for money.
But I don't know what else to do. We're already a joke in the neighborhood.
Get a grip, Mom.
But Emma soon faced her own troubles. The mistresses began showing up at the hospital she ran with her husband, demanding money. Emma's husband blamed her.
This is a disaster because of your family.
Their marriage seemed to be deteriorating. Since the scandal, Emily and Emma's relationship worsened. Emily started to berate Emma arrogantly, and Emma was blamed by her husband and in-laws for marrying into a disgraceful family. Emily and Emma's pride was shattered. As for me, I decided it was best to distance myself from Emily and Emma, who had insulted me and Mom. Getting involved with such disdainful people would only bring more unpleasantness. Keeping our distance brought us peace. Next year, James and I are expecting a child. We aspire to build a warm and stable family, not just one that appears impressive.